Purple Yellow Croc versus Doflamingo. Man, this is going to be an interesting matchup here, as Doflamingo can go pretty quickly, and Purple Yellow Croc is sometimes a little slow, kind of like on the same axis as a Nell. But I love me some Purple Yellow Croc. It is probably one of my favorite decks. I'm even rocking an alt art that I got from a site called, or a guy named Atakai TCG. This is I guess, Lakers Croc. That's like a dubbed name, just because he's purple and yellow. I got this pretty cool alt art that I'm showing off. We're going to go ahead and start it off. We ended up losing the die roll, being forced to go second, which is fine. I don't mind going second. We have a nice turn 1 play of the Miss Valentine grabbing a 8-drop Croc. 8-drop Croc is a house in this deck, absolute house. I love slamming that card down, but I wait until I'm at least at 10 Dawn to slam that card down, because he does -2 Dawn when you play him out to heal a card. And then we get hit with the just kind of the nuts. Is that a Jinbei into a Weevil right off the top here? 7k at lead. I'm gonna go ahead and take that one. We're gonna feed ourselves another Croc here. One Croc pretty good, 2 Crocs also pretty good. Now if I see a third one, I'm gonna be a little sad there. We end up picking up a Yamato off the top of the deck here. We do have the on curve play of a Mr. 2 to ramp me up some more Dawn. I also do have this nice little Miss Wednesday in hand as well, which is going to be another target for ramp here. So do have some options in hand at this point. I could play out the Miss Wednesday. She is a blocker that does ramp me when my opponent attacks. I am going to decide to do that. I'm going to go ahead and just send 6k at the Jinbei, try to get just some cards out of hand here. Typically when you're playing against Doflamingo, you got to send 7ks into 5s. You got to make sure there's at least a 2k difference, but just because Doflamingo runs a ton of 2ks. Opponent here reading the card as not a lot of people see Miss Wednesday. She's really only good in Purple Yellow Crocodile, just because when my opponent attacks, I minus a Dawn, and then I get a Dawn back from her, and then I get a Dawn back from my leader, so it does effectively ramp me Dawn on my opponent's turn. So I will go up to 5 Dawn at the end of my opponent's turn and go up to 7 on my turn. So that's pretty cool. It gets us like 1 whole turn cycle closer to Yamato here, even though I'm on the even curve. So 6k, I'm going to go ahead and activate ability. We're going to return 1 and get another one. Get 2 from 1 from my leader and 1 from Miss Wednesday. That's just a 6k lead. I am potentially incentivized to counter out of it here. We're going to use a 2k though. If you look at my hand, it is feeling kind of light right now. We've got two 1ks, a 0 cost event that can counter up to 3k as long as I pitch another card. But still, not feeling great here. But I do kind of want to protect my life. Again, I do potentially have like a Yamato play in 2 turns, right? And if I'm at 1 or less life, I can heal. So like I am incentivized to like try to go to 1, but I didn't want to go to 1 that fast. Now we see a 7k attack here, and I really do not want to go to 1, because I am not playing. I'm not going to be able to play Croc next turn. I'm not playing anything that heals, so I'm just going to go ahead and pitch a Croc here. Like I said, I like 2 of them, but like 1 of them is just enough, and I really just need to keep as much counter in hand as possible. And look at that, the top of the deck rewards me. I get another Croc there. So if I had decided to like pitch the Bon Clay with the 0 cost counter, I would have had 3 Crocs in hand. And now I'm feeling a little bit better with this spread here. Still a little counter light and just a little slow. I do have a Gadatsu in hand. Gadatsu is pretty nice here as my opponent still has a 5 life. That Gadatsu could pop the the Weevil here. I'm going to go ahead and send 7k. I think we're going to send 7k into a 5k here. We're going to send it at Jinbei here. In hindsight, maybe I should have sent it at Gecko Moria. My opponent maybe wouldn't have been incentivized to maybe counter out of it, potentially. I don't know. We might see. Yeah, so we did see Gecko Moria pick up a 2k from last turn, so that 2k, 1k to get out of it. Gadatsu is going to clean up the other one, and then I'm just going to pass back to my opponent. My goal coming out of this turn is to basically like not go to 0, right? So, but if you look at my hand is not great for doing that. I've got 1 blocker on board, 2 1ks in hand. My life has to be either very generous or who knows what could happen here. Opponent's going to go ahead and set up another Perona here. The thing that I'm kind of hoping for at this point is no Jinbei off the top, right? Jinbei off the top again would be pretty brutal, as Doflamingo's already got like a really aggressive start here, and my deck is slightly set up to handle a little bit of aggression. It does have Gadatsus for that middle curve right there. If I didn't have that Gadatsu there, I'd just be playing like a Bon Clay and passing, which isn't very interactive at all. But we do have a little bit of play in the middle, but we really just want to get to the high Dawn there to just start dropping big boss threats every single turn, gaining life, having fun, gaining life, taking life, gaining life, taking life, trying to hit some triggers in between, the typical you know, yellow deck shenanigans. But we'll see here. You know, opponent has quite a bit of Dawn open. They got 6 Dawn open here. Could potentially be set up something pretty nice on lead. They did keep the top 5 on lead, so we're probably going to activate. And that's a Weevil coming into play. You know, not as bad as a Jinbei, but a Weevil is also just really strong. So I'm just going to go ahead and activate Miss Wednesday's effect on attack. I'm going to just return a Dawn and get Dawn back. If I did have an event in hand, I would have been able to like play an event, but unfortunately don't have any events in hand. We end up just taking that hit, and it's just another 1k off the top. This is a little scary here, a little dicey. I do have a Yamato that I could play next turn to basically KO anything and then heal me a life here, but I'm sitting right now, I think, at 6 cards in hand currently. Yep, 6 cards in hand at this point. Opponent thinking on what they want to do here. This is, you know, we could get... I see 2 Dawn open. I see like a 5k and a 5k. He could either go 6 and 6, or he could go 5 and 7. Either way, I don't have enough counter in my hand to get out of that. I only have 3k counter. And remember, you got to beat it to stop it here. Opponent's just going to go ahead and hit me with a 5k. So regardless of how he swung here, I was going to be able to get out of one of them. But then once he goes for that 7k, I've potentially incentivized here to block, because I don't want to go down to 0 here. So I think we're just going to go ahead and cash in the Miss Wednesday. She is, you know, she does ramp you, but she's also a blocker. And now I'm going to be sitting at 10 Dawn this turn here, which is pretty nice. So draw a card here. I think that was an ace off the top there. So I'm just like, my hand is getting very full of boss monsters at this point. And that's kind of, it's not great, but that's where like Purple Croc also can kind of come in and cycle your hand out, right? Whenever your opponent attacks you, you get to minus a Dawn and then draw a card and discard a card to potentially get counter out of your hand. Currently going to go ahead and send 7 into something to try to, you know, get a 7 check something. I'm going to go ahead and 5 check something. If they want to use a 1k from hand, a lot of the 1ks in this deck are in Doffy's deck are very useful, right? So that Gecko Morio, boom, got a Gecko Morio out of hand, right? That Gecko Morio could have come down, grabbed a potential Jinbei if I kill a Jinbei, or, you know, just a 2k counter. And we're just gonna try to do maximize like board control to a degree. We're gonna go ahead and pop the Weevil with the Yamato and then gain up a life. So here still we're not feeling great. 2k counter in hand, right? Between 2 cards, a lot of bricks. This is one thing that unfortunately, like decks like this that run like a pretty heavy top end engine, and my engine's not even that heavy. Go ahead and slap the camera while I'm at it. I'm only running what 10 high drops, right? I run 4 Yamatos, 4 Crocs, and 2 aces. So, you know, only 10 top end, whereas like Enel typically runs at least 12 top end, right? 4, 4, and 4 of his boss monsters, as well as like Russian L's and stuff like that. So, you know, I don't necessarily have too much brick in my deck. I'm just happening to draw the top stuff, which, you know, it happens. Opponent's going to go ahead and attach 2, going to go ahead and swing. Going to go ahead and reveal a Jinbei. Oh my goodness, this Doffy is doing Doffy things. He's hitting me hard. He's going to go play out. Hopefully what I was hoping was not a... another Weevil. Going to play out a Mihawk, and then I take a life. Unfortunately, it was a trigger that I couldn't trigger. This is something that like is potentially, you know, maybe a Nanbo in this deck is like running Gadatsus, but also Kikunojos, because typically you want to keep their life high. But Kikunojo does have a nice little tech in this deck. You know, if I do start attacking my opponent's life total, which I do have big threats at this point, I could potentially like force them to attack it and gain me a life. And my opponent just goes ahead and slaps on a pudding. And honestly, and I told my opponent after this game, that pudding actually saved my hand. My hand was a little clunky, right? I needed a little more to work with. I needed some 2Ks, some 1Ks, some other stuff to work with, though I did lose a lot of my top end, right? And that's how I gained life in this deck, right? Once you get to these top turns, you just want to see your top end. I'm going to draw 5 here. We don't see any top end, but we do see a nice little event. We do see some more interaction. So like next turn I do have plays, and now my opponent has just fed me a bunch of counter as well, right? I got 2 2Ks, a 1K, 2 2Ks, 2 1Ks. I'm kind of trying to consider here, like I could 2K 1K out of it, but like that Weevil or that Gadatsu as well as that blocker is like a potential play for next turn, right? So I could Gadatsu and play a blocker next turn if I don't draw anything good, right? So I have to counter out with those 2 2Ks, which feels pretty bad, but we don't find anything here. So we are just gonna go with that play here. We're gonna stay at 1 life. We're gonna just try to answer board. right? So the Gadatsu is going to could answer the Mihawk, right? And then I could swing, you know, some amount. I think I have enough Dawn to like go 7 into a Jinbei, 9 into a Jinbei with Yamato, and then pop the Mihawk. I'm just trying to do board control at this point because I need to play this like a control deck. I need to keep answering the board. Doflamingo only does have like 1 card in hand at this point. Go ahead and clear that, and then play out a Gadatsu. Almost shot at the pudding. That pudding's only a 4K, and it would require Dawn to commit to it. So kill the thing that can easily attack and also cycle. That Mihawk's really good. And then we're just going to go ahead and said 6 at lead. We're going to start feeding Doflamingo a little bit here because I do ultimately need to end the game, right? If I can't, the big goal is just to keep playing boss monsters and gaining life, so that way you can get to a point where you just end the game. So I do need to end the game eventually. We're just going to play out a Miss Wednesday here. That Miss Wednesday, though, here can stand up Dawn, right? So Miss Wednesday does minus a Dawn and then get a Dawn back. So I can technically stand up a Dawn with Miss Wednesday with little cameo there with ACOS Croc as well. You can tell I'm like getting into this. You know, I'm getting a little excited because or maybe a little anxious because this game wasn't necessarily going the way I wanted it to go. The opponent's board is being pretty well answered at this point. Opponent going to go ahead and play out what looks like a Mori off the top. Mori's probably going to grab a Jinbei or maybe a 2K counter because my opponent's hand is so light. But we did get Gravity Bladed. That Gravity Blade cleaned up 2 of my Gadatsus here. Those are potential threats to deal with his board, which is pretty unfortunate. Though I am pretty glad at this point that he kept my blocker around because that blocker could potentially save me in a pinch here. So 7K, I'm debating on if I want to block or if I just want to take the hit. I'm just going to take the hit. It does manage to be a nice little trigger here. So this trigger is going to minus a Dawn, and then I'll get the Dawn back. But it lets me find a Baroque Works cards. I'm going to grab that nice little 8-drop Croc. 8-drop Croc is a pretty great pickup later here, especially with just needing to gain life at this point, right? I need to go back up to 1. I only have 1 blocker. If that blocker gets bottom decked, I'm pretty sad. Go ahead and draw, and we end up picking up a Yamato too. So Yamato also like lets me deal with their board, right? And so I was like incentivized to play Croc at this point, but like because I drew the Yamato is going to do something better potentially that Croc can do at this point, and it's going to allow me to handle the board. So I'm going to go ahead and send 5K into the Gecko before I show off that I have a Yamato. Yamato is going to come down, gain me a life, and KO the pudding. Right, so now opponent has 2 characters. I'm at 1 life, 3 cards in hand, also have a blocker up. I'm feeling like pretty good right now. I could potentially send that Yamato into lead to just go ahead and keep whittling down at this point. Like I'm giving up the fact that if I draw a Gadatsu, the Gadatsu is pretty much going to be offline. There is a prone I could clean up if I really needed to. And as well as I still have the O Come My Way in my hand, right? So O Come My Way is a fantastic card for this deck. It's really only usable in this deck. It's usable in like purple blue Croc as well. But yeah, I don't know if you can hear that the laundry's done. But that card is really great. It basically allows me to turn any character into a blocker. So my 9K Yamato could become a blocker if they decide to send something at phase here. Speaking of which, one of my Yamatos has just vanished to the bottom of my deck via a red rock there, which is pretty unfortunate. But I have more play in hand now, so more big threats coming. Opponent's just going to go ahead and send 5K at lead here. I have just a 2K counter in hand or an O Come My Way. I see a potential like 5K, 6K coming, potentially, if he doesn't have anything else to play. But I do remember that he does have a Jinbei in hand, so it's likely he'll just play the Jinbei out and play something else. So I'm just going to go ahead and counter that because I really don't want to go back to 0. I really don't want to use a blocker because I know Jinbei's coming down and doing a little bit of work here. Jinbei brings Mr. Crocodile into play too. Crocodile, just a 5K attacker. Does have an ability, but that ability is not something he wants to use. It bounces a 2 or less, and I don't think he wants to give me Searchers back to my hand. So we go ahead and draw. We pick up another Gadatsu. That is kind of the unfortunate part. Like, Gadatsu could still come down and clean something up, but at this point, I just want to turbo and just play Croc again. So we're going to send 6K or 7K at lead here because ultimately I do just need to finish the game. So he's going to go ahead and counter up to 8. All right, then we'll go 9K lead. And then he will take it. Just thinking there for a second. And then I will play out the big old Croc Daddy. Croc Daddy is going to minus 2 Dawn and then gain me a life. And then whenever my opponent attacks me on any attack, right, it's not every attack, I can choose if I wanted to use it on a later attack, though I do tend sometimes to forget about its trigger, on the first attack. But it's a super great trigger. It does let me cycle my hand. That Gadatsu in my hand is a 1k right now. I could potentially draw something better and turn that 1k into maybe a 2k. Or like another spell. This does also allow me to set my Dawn back up, right? Because I'll minus a Dawn and I'll get a Dawn back from my leader ability, which allows me to immediately have O come my way available to turn anything into a blocker. Those Miss Valentines are looking like blockers all of a sudden, but since I've got a Yamato on board, I could just turn, as long as it's not like a 9k swing, I could turn any swing that's less than 9k, just right at Yamato, right? Because I don't want to have to commit resources if I'm doing something like using it as a potential blocker. Opponent here, gonna go ahead and tap 9 Dawn, gonna play out a Sanji, blind flip, I guess, blind flip right into a Croc. Nice little play there. Though at this point, I'm feeling like I just kind of want to go for game potentially, right? Because opponent's building up enough of a board. I don't have another healer in hand. At this point, like the only healer that would potentially get me value is another Croc, right? Because Croc is unconditional. He can heal regardless, as long as you -2 Dawn. Yamato requires you to be at 1 or less. I also run Ace. Ace requires you to be technically at like 2 or less life initially, because he just doesn't get rushed if you have more than that. You can opt to like not gain the life, but at this point, why wouldn't I do that? All right, passing to me here. He doesn't attack at all because he actually doesn't want to give me the cycle. So like that's just how powerful ACOS Croc is like sometimes it just makes the opponent not want to attack you. So I'm with 2 cards in hand, or 3 cards in hand, 2 life, and I'm like, okay, opponent has 2 cards, 2 life, no blockers. I have quite a few attackers. I've got 10 Dawn. I think we're just going to go ahead and pressure. So we're going to go ahead and go 5 lead. We're going to sim with the Valentine. The reason I don't attack with Wednesday here is because I don't want to give up a blocker if I don't have to. All right, opponent had 2 2Ks in hand. We'll send a 9k at lead. 9k is going to trigger a Perfume Femur free card. 9k at lead. Takes it, and then this is a guaranteed win here. 9k at lead again, getting it the win over Doflamingo. What do we have in life? We had an Ace and a Bon Clay. This was a crazy game. 2 Jinbeis, even a Sanji, and I was able to just manage to survive there. And big shout out to that pudding. That pudding actually made my hit a lot better. That's the danger of pudding, people. Sometimes you turn a bad hand into a good one. But with that, thanks for watching, everybody. If you like this type of content, feel free to subscribe. We will see you in the next video.